Thank you very much. I had the privilege of being present in the previous session, which was very interesting. In fact, it set the pace for the discussions and presentations in this session as well, because both the issues seem to overlap with each other. The fuel mix, path ahead, and the future of fossil fuel. And fossil fuel, at least in this part of the world, predominates the rest of the other energy sources. We have a very distinguished panel drawn from each sector. We have people from coal, from gas, for other petroleum products. Of course, we do not have the renewables. Renewables could be but renewable was covered substantially in the last session as well. I think for the global context, at this juncture, we have overwhelming support for encouraging, promoting, and facilitating renewables in a significant way, overwhelming. In the last particularly 3 to 4 years, we have overwhelming comments, observations, and viewpoints against coal. That's also there. So we have renewable overwhelmingly supported, and we have coal critically complained against with all its problems. Then we have developed countries who have reached a stage, and we have countries who are trying to reach certain stage, like India being one of them. We are at about 1,100 kilowatt hour per head per year of power consumption, which is far behind the global average, significantly behind even China. China may be 3,000 kilowatt hour plus, and we are one-third, so one-third of China. And I have nothing to compare with the European countries and American countries where climatic conditions differ, significantly differ. In the last 4 years, however, discussions have also started, whether our overwhelming support for renewables and overwhelming criticism of coal is well placed, or it is something euphoric. Not using the word euphoric, but that discussion has also started. In Indian context, India is one of the countries in the world which has taken a very major policy initiative and thrust in terms of action to go in a significant way on renewable, setting a target of 175,000 megawatt in 5 years' time, counting from 2017. And 175,000 megawatt is a big figure, very big figure. 100,000 megawatt of solar itself, including rooftop solar. And the discussions have started on technical issues, whether we will be able to manage the grid when solar is not available, what happens if storage is not available, storage is not in affordable range of price, etc., etc. So that means not to the point of withdrawal of our overwhelming support anyway, but a caution. A large cross-section of people, informed people, have started also cautioning that we all love renewable, but are we okay in the targets that we have fixed for ourselves? I mean, is it too big a target, not from the point of view whether it is achievable, but from the point of view whether it will be able to manage technically, commercially, financially, all the things put together. As of today, as you know, in Indian context, we have a little less than 60% of installed capacity in power, which is based on coal. But the generation is as high as 76%. The 60% capacity, but power generation is 76%. Because not all the energy sources give you same level of capacity utilization as the thermal power gives you. Even hydro gives you much less, about 40%. Wind gives you about 25 to 28%. Solar gives you less than 20% of the capacity in terms of generation, and so on and so forth. So percentages of capacity, installed capacity, and percentages of power that is generated, though of late, in last 2-3 years, the plant load factor of installed capacity of thermal power has reduced. Yet, out of 58% of installed capacity, 76% of power generation, of total power generation in the country, goes from conventional coal-based power generation. If the capacity utilization was higher, which it was at one time, in close to 79-80%, then this figure will be much more. It may be even about 80%. So it gives you different degree of capacity utilization and flexibility, etc., etc. So I think that is the situation today. We have, as some speakers in the previous session have made the point, we have a long way to go, not only in terms of enhancing the per capita consumption, but also in providing access to electricity to a large cross-section of our society who do not have access. Almost 20% of rural access is still to be taken care of. And wherever we have, we do not have a reliable power supply. Government has set out a good target of 24/7, but progressively things are improving and would go a long way. We have been dependent on domestic coal in a big way. As I said, that 76% of our generation is coal-based, but also saying that we do import, but our dependence on domestic coal is substantial. I mean, coal and power, they are moving together on that in terms of, and just as coal industry has almost 75% of its consumption, some 75% of its supply, or maybe more than 75% of its supply going to power sector. How the future will shape, one doesn't know, because these are the policy directions, and a good shift in policy directions have taken place. One more point that needed to be said, not said, and that is hydro. Hydro India has 150,000 megawatt of potential. And we have been able to harness about 50,000, 45,000 large ones, and around 5,000, 4,800, the smaller ones, the mini and micro and others, less than 25 megawatt. And our track record on improving the installed capacity in hydro has been somewhat not so satisfying. So it has declined. Even in last 10 years, from about 26 to 27% of the total capacity in the country, it has declined to close to 14%. So it has gone down because of huge inflow of capacity that came through the thermal route. So that's one scenario, because hydro is as renewable, all hydro is as renewable, though globally it was a global mistake. Somewhere it has been corrected, not fully corrected, to acknowledge and to recognize all hydro, whether mini hydro, micro hydro, a storage project or run-of-the-river projects as renewable, but there is growing recognition and acceptance of the fact that all hydro are renewables. Global energy developers and policymakers have not been as kind to this renewable as they should have been. As a professional, as one who has believed in these energy development programs, I do seriously think that global mistake, it has been a global mistake not to have accepted hydro right from the beginning as a renewable source of generation. As a result, not only in India, where we have tapped our potential to less than 20%, but globally, the track record is that not more than 22% of hydro potential has been tapped. So we started discussing other sources of renewables and discarding and neglecting hydro in the same manner as we started neglecting after some time or ignoring the importance of coal as a very reliable source of energy. So these have been some of the future that I can see, that in spite of our best intention, I don't think in next 15, 20 years, so far as India is concerned, and so far as South Asia as a whole is concerned. I also advise through the World Bank the different governments in the South Asia. But I see, because of their anxiety to sort out their problems on power and the deep crisis that they are resorting, like Bangladesh in a big way is resorting to coal-based power generation. It's a big, very big way, because their own source of gas has dried up, and they aren't able to even feed the gas-based capacity that they have. That's the scenario. In India, we have always had, at least from the time I entered the energy sector, and this is quite about 30 years plus, we were always keen to embrace gas-based power generation in a big way, but it has been a very, very great struggle. At this point of time, India has built 25,000 megawatt of gas-based power generation, and it doesn't get gas more than one-third of that. So that has been the scenario, as a sort of erratic and unreliable supply of gas, and more importantly, very unreliable directions of the prices of gas at which they can buy if they want to substitute the domestic gas partly through the imported LNG. So this has been the scenario. So as I said, that next 15, 20 years, I don't see the scenario changing very, very different and radically different, that 76% of coal-based generation would go down to something like 50%, I don't see. In terms of generation, capacity we can increase this way or that way, but I don't see. So our dependence will continue. The best that we can do is that we make best use of the coal-based generation, like clean coal technology. Some of the points were discussed. I leave it for the present. When I come back again after our other panelists have made their observations, that how do we do if we have to depend in a big way on coal-based generation, which I think, in spite of 100,000 megawatt solar that we might do in, if not 5 years, maybe 7 years, 8 years, we will have to continue in a big way on coal-based generation. Also, we will continue, Indian power sector, Indian energy consumers will continue to be sympathetic to gas, as I can see, very sympathetic. I addressed about 2 months back international conference on gas right in, I think, in one of the hotels here, and I said, the future is for you to write your future. If you become more reliable in terms of supply and a little more predictable in terms of price behavior, not that price will be fixed, I think consumers are there to love you and to embrace you. But so far the track record has been somewhat a little different. So with that, may I now request, will you make the point first? Okay, thank you.